Hello, Rewilders. You are listening to Woo Woo Radio 100.1 LPFM, Rewilding Life. And we are so pleased today to welcome Jean Tsao from Michigan State University to our TikTok today. Unfortunately, this is a hot topic up in northern Michigan, and we have one of the state's predominant experts in this field with us, if not the country's predominant expert. Jean has over 20 years of experience studying Borrelia burgdorferi. I hope I got that right. The bacterium that causes Lyme disease and its vector, the black-legged tick. Jean helped develop the program at Michigan State for the study of conservation medicine, and she teaches courses in medical entomology and field ecology of disease vectors like ticks and mosquitoes. She also trains veterinary students to investigate diseases in wildlife and diseases that move from wild animals to humans, companion animals, and livestock. So, Jean, welcome to Rewilding Life on Woo Woo Radio.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. So, like I said, unfortunately, this is a hot topic in northern Michigan and really, I think all of Michigan now. So, we are so pleased to hear it from the expert today and hopefully get some, I'm sure we'll get some really good advice from you and we'll learn a lot as far as what's going on with ticks in Michigan and what we can do to protect ourselves and our pets and our livestock, right?
Happy to be here.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
Jane, could you tell us a little bit about your background and how you became interested in this? This is such a interesting topic, but I guess you didn't probably, as a kindergarten student,
No.
think I'm going to become a tick specialist. How did you end up here?
Yeah, no, I enjoyed biology when I went to college. The biology professors all seemed like they were having a great time. And I had other interests, but I think I just became interested in biology and ecology in general. And during the time I was in college, there were some other outbreaks of diseases like hantavirus, which actually we're hearing about again now,
Uh-huh.
and Lyme disease was on the rise. This was in the late 80s, early 90s. And I thought, wow, I could try to study something about disease and help people, society become less sick, but I could do it through ecology. And then one thing led to another. And then I came to Michigan State in the early 2000s.
Okay, great,
Good. And
great.
as fellow Spartans, we are very pleased that you went to Michigan State. So,
Yeah. And
thank you for choosing green.
yeah, and I actually have to back up and say I did some ecology in college. I came to the Kellogg Biological Station. That's part of Michigan State
Mhm.
University down near Gull Lake, and that was my first foray into learning about ecology, but that was with zooplankton and
Okay,
aquatic ecology. So I that's when I first came to Michigan, really loved it, and then I came back into the Department of Fisheries and Wildlife. So,
awesome,
Yeah.
awesome. So you're probably getting a lot of phone calls these days with the tick population exploding. And we've been doing some independent research on this ourselves. Even before we even had a radio show, we've been saying, what's going on with all these ticks? I mean, are we imagining things? We've been in Michigan most of our lives. And as kids, we didn't even really think about it. We thought of it as something that people out west had to worry about. What's changed? Why are we getting these now?
yeah, well, I enjoy or appreciate, I should say, hearing from longtime Michiganders because sometimes with many diseases and vectors, you only know when you look. And so when you hear from people who have spent a lot of time outdoors growing up and saying that they haven't seen ticks, it kind of verifies for the scientists and the public health professional that the ticks are actually spreading. And it's not just that we are looking more
Mhm.
because of
Mhm.
some local outbreak or something like
Mhm.
that. So what's happened? It's probably not as exciting as it seems, but partially in our area, we don't know exactly where our ticks came from, but the genetics of the ticks, the pathogens suggest that, our ticks are probably originally from western Wisconsin, as well as and that focus spread to throughout Wisconsin and Minnesota beginning around probably the 1970s or so. And then we did have a focus in the Upper Peninsula in Menominee County, the county that juts down into Lake Michigan. But it's unclear whether or not our ticks in the lower part of Michigan are actually from there. And but it's just been a matter of time. So Indiana discovered the ticks that they were established probably also mid-80s or so. And then as I was time I did give you a timeline for the Menominee population, but that was late 80s, early 90s. But then soon, I came in 2000, and Professor Ned Walker and his students at Michigan State, they started tracking the tick population in Southwest Michigan because Ned had been working with scientists in Illinois and Wisconsin, and they looked at what habitats of the what features of the habitat, the soils, the vegetation, the climate, what was seemingly mapped to the places where it had ticks and places that didn't. And they mapped it onto Michigan, and it seemed like a lot of Michigan is going to be suitable. And we have all the hosts. So
Mm,
we have the hosts, the deer, the mice, the ticks. I mean, sorry, the birds. I mean, these ticks are not picky eaters. So we have
mhm,
everything. And partially it was just waiting for them. They just got here. And then once they got here in the early 2000s in a sizable, large enough number to beat the odds of whatever mortality factors they normally face, then they just
mhm,
started spreading. And then it's
mhm,
like a snowball effect
mhm,
because each mom tick can lay about 1,000 eggs. And so in
mhm,
the beginning, when you have a few moms, it spreads slowly. But when you have many, many
Hmm.
mom ticks, it
mhm,
starts spreading faster. And I think that's really what's happening.
mm. Okay. Yeah. And there's I've heard some talk about the lack of controlled burns. Jill and I have talked about this, and we don't like the idea of forest fires, and
Right.
I don't think politically it sounds good to go around saying we want to burn more forests down, but
Right.
maybe that's part of the problem too, or is that wrong?
That is that is most definitely part of the problem in certain areas of the country. Up here right now, I think it would also be the case. I was on the weekend just on, holiday. I went to Western Michigan, but in the southern part, but then we also went through Allegan State Game Area. Have you been there? It's
No.
it's a large place that is burned, and it
Oh,
shows the habitat, this oak savanna,
oh,
which is a lot of oak trees that are really, what's interspersed amongst the oak trees is just really low grass, and there's not much mid-level story, and
mhm,
there's not much shrubs and not much leaf litter, and it's open canopy. And
mhm,
so that type of habitat is more dry, and that actually does reduce the amount of habitat, the leaves. I mean, they're there, but it's just
mhm,
drier. And
right,
ticks in general, that's their kryptonite.
right,
They are prone to desiccation. Now, not
mm,
all of Michigan, though, going back over time, would be a place where there would be a lot of burning.
mhm,
Um, but in some habitats, it's just more wet
mhm,
than even with the burning. Might help,
mhm,
but certainly burning is probably not the only solution. Yeah.
Okay.
mhm. Well,
What about deer overabundance? How does that play into this? Because that's something we talk about on our show a lot.
Yes. Yes, so you're right. So one reason why the ticks probably started spreading both out of the Northeast and the Midwest in the mid 60s and then 70s is such that back then there weren't that many deer everywhere.
mhm,
But then with management, successful management of having deer, it's product, as the DNR would say, the deer are kind of a product of the success that they had
mhm,
Hmm.
previously,
mhm,
because it's not just the management of hunting, but also creating more habitat for them. And if you
mhm,
create more
Right.
habitat for the deer, it's great. And then also for all the other woodland animals that feed the ticks.
mhm,
Now, having said that, we now have many more deer that are needed to support the tick population.
mhm,
So, as you said, Jill, the overabundance is an issue, but you would have to reduce the deer to a really low level, probably to one that's lower than what people would accept now,
Hmm.
to really have, to whack down the effect that deer have on the tick population.
mm,
Okay. So if prescribed burns and deer aren't necessarily going to solve this, I mean, maybe I'm jumping to the end of this story, but
mm.
what should we be doing, right?
Well, that's the hard part because I think any solution, so there are some other solutions. So other people, the CDC is investing money in trying to come up with other approaches. And so we can come back to deer towards the end, but other approaches are you can spray chemicals and you can try to spray them judiciously. They will kill other arthropods, other insects, spiders, and such. But just like with mosquito control, it depends on the pros and cons, what you're trying
Mhm.
to achieve, and
Mhm.
you try to minimize the negative effects of the spray.
Mhm.
So that you can do. And there's some more commentary on that, but you can do that. There are other methods that are trying to target the small mammals that are considered the really important hosts for the larval and the nymphal stage of the tick, which are the baby and the teenage stage,
Mhm.
respectively. They're
Mhm.
the stage. So all ticks hatch uninfected with the Lyme disease bacterium, and several other bacteria that the tick can vector to humans. So what happens is they acquire that bacteria during their first blood meal, during their larval blood meal,
Mhm.
often from a small mammal. Could be also from a bird to a songbird.
Mhm.
Certain species are also what we call reservoirs. But then once they cannot transmit during the same blood meal, generally speaking, because unlike mosquitoes, they need that full blood meal and then they molt to the next stage. So when they emerge as nymphs, which is around now, some have
Mhm.
already emerged down here, maybe up where you are too. And now they have a chance to transmit any bacteria that they've acquired to the next
Mhm.
host.
Mhm.
And so what people have thought is, well, what we can do is target the small mammals. So there are these little devices there you may have seen online called tick tubes. That's one
Mhm.
type where actually they're commercial versions you can buy at sporting goods stores, probably Walmart, Meyer, but they have permethrin inside or some
Mhm.
other chemical.
Mhm.
And and so the mice go in there to try to get the cotton balls, that I should say, that are soaked in
Mhm.
that substance, and then they bring it back to their nests. And then what
Mhm.
happens is that it'll kill any ticks that are on them or drop off them in the nest. All
Mhm.
right. And so you get rid of the infected ticks. You're not reducing the huge tick population, but you're
Right.
maybe reducing the ones that are infected. Another device
Mhm.
kind of uses a topical chemical that people put on their dogs and cats,
Mhm.
right? I think mainly with their dogs. And then what happens is they have this in a box, but this has to be, you have to get this from a licensed pest operator. And so mice or chipmunks run inside the box because there's some bait in there. And then there's a little wick that has this chemical and it goes on their back and it wicks all over their body. And
Oh,
again,
wow.
kills the tick and potentially the ones that are most important for
Mhm.
infecting people.
Mhm.
The issue with this is that, again, the results are mixed, whether or not they're really reducing the ticks to a meaningful level. And so in some places it works, some they don't. And so the research is trying to understand why it works in some places, why it doesn't. And so there's not going to be any silver bullet,
Sure.
but you can target the host using these methods and the small mammals. Um, then the other way is just certainly in a park, but also your backyard. It's basically to try to remove tick or small mammal habitat or like
Mhm.
wildlife habitat, because
Mhm.
all wildlife can bring ticks to you. So
Yeah.
that is just moving your brush piles, your wood piles, your leaf piles to the edge of the perimeter of your property. To the
Mhm.
redundant, yeah. And then, but then also like your swing sets, wherever people recreate, bring them in towards the center of your lawn.
Okay.
Don't grow ground cover around your house that attracts small animals. And then when you're in those areas, take precautions.
Wow,
Um,
Gene, it sounds like a
yeah,
multi-prong attack, really. I think we need a, policy from the government on one end, but all of us individually can help. And actually, I think we've inadvertently invited a lot more ticks to our place because in the last couple of years, we've been less likely to rake our leaves, thinking that this might help certain insect populations, and I guess it does.
right,
And it also helps the tick population because it
right,
sounds like they like, everything that we've created here, which is, thicker canopies, which lead to less sunlight on the ground, and then nice wet leaves everywhere that we're not moving. So maybe we could do more because, I think ultimately everybody is listening today, or most of them are kind of like, that's great, but how can I keep ticks off of me and my family? So in the places where we spend most of our time, meaning our yards and so forth, maybe we do need to think about where we keep these leaves if we want to keep leaves around for other purposes, at least get them away from places where people are trafficking more often.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
Okay.
We want to enjoy nature. I would always say that, enjoy nature, whether it's in your backyard or you're out in the woods, but we just need to take precautions to try to
Well,
reduce the risk.
yeah, and let me just make it a little personal here. Have you ever had a tick embedded
Yes,
on you?
yes,
And it's
many.
not a good feeling, is it? I've had
No, I feel violated every year.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. I know emotionally it just gets to us on a primal level, but,
Right,
I don't like it either.
right.
We're pretty comfortable with most things on us, but I don't like the idea of contracting a chronic illness for the rest of my life, and
Right, and
so,
right, and
that bugs
also
me. Yeah,
it's different than a mosquito, it comes and goes, right? A tick, when you find that it's fed on you
Mhm.
for a while too, you're thinking, "How did it hide from me?" It seems kinda
yeah.
Right.
stealthy,
So do you have a certain uniform you wear when you're out doing your field work or just in your
actually
general life?
right, I mean, generally speaking, if I'm just going out for a little bit, I'll wear what anyone might be wearing when they're hiking, but I tend to follow the guidance, which is to tuck your pants legs into your socks, and then I spray my shoes, my socks, my pants with DEET
Okay.
and or a non-DEET product that has been approved by the EPA, that's registered with the EPA to say it's effective against ticks. There are about 3 or 4 other products,
Mhm.
and then, and I just make sure that well, I try to wear light colored clothes so that I
Mhm.
can see the ticks better.
Mhm.
But no
Mhm.
matter what, I think partially because of my job, I just try to be vigilant all the time. I know
Sure.
that if I'm going into the woods, if I try to stay on the trails when I'm having fun, but if I need to do something, go off trail. And plus, I'm a biologist, the bird people, everyone, you want to go
Right.
off trail to see something,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
But then I just know I'm doing that and I know I'm brushing against vegetation that may have ticks. So when I come back on the trail, I look. And then certainly when I get back to my car, get back to the house, I look. Now, when I'm working and seriously looking for the ticks and taking a drag cloth, a 1 meter squared white cloth, flannel or corduroy to sample the vegetation for ticks, I tend to wear a white painter suit.
Mm.
Mm.
That's a
And
good
Okay.
so
idea.
yeah, because it's just my uniform, and I wear light, like, like weight clothes underneath. It can be hot, right? This is
Mhm.
a 50/50 cotton polyester blend, and
Right.
many of the students don't wanna wear it because it can be hot. But
Mhm.
I just tend to say, "It's my uniform, I wear light clothes underneath," and when I get to the car yeah, and of course I treat that too, I spray it, and then when I get to the car, I take that off, I search that, I still look at myself because it's not hermetically sealed, but
Mhm.
but I just feel like, that's what I do is to try to
Mm.
reduce my risk. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
That helps a
Okay.
lot.
That
Yeah.
does. And you
And if you
mentioned oh,
I
go
was
ahead.
one more thing. If
Yeah.
you spend a lot of time outdoors and have some clothes already dedicated to your outdoor activities, you can spray them with permethrin. And
Mm.
Right.
that I don't know if you were going to ask me about
I
that.
was. I
Yes.
Um,
was.
And that, is toxic for arthropods, again, insects, spiders, ticks, but it's not toxic for us, our dogs. Now, cats can be negatively affected, but if you let the product dry, then it will be fine. But
mm.
that, if you do it yourself, that'll last 6 or 7 washes. You can
Oh,
al
that's what I was gonna ask.
Yeah, right, it's great,
Sounds like
and
you've asked some of these questions before. You knew where to handle it.
Yeah.
well, I think
Yeah.
that's a bonus, right? And
Yeah,
then
no, that's
because
great.
it does take 2 to 3 hours to treat the clothing and let it dry,
Mhm.
but then you can also, there's this company called Insect Shield. You can either send your clothing to them to have them professionally treated, then they're good for 60 to 70 washes,
Oh, wow.
or you can buy clothes that they already have made, that way, and or you can go to a sporting goods store and there are certain companies that have made clothes treated with, permethrin already. So
Jill
you
bought me a couple of those already, and they're still in my drawer because I'm afraid to take them out and have the product wear off, but now I have an idea they'll last for
Yeah,
a while.
right, it'll last
Jean,
for a while.
yes,
Yeah,
Jean's
I
giving you
better get
full
those out.
approval. Where are the clothes now?
Right,
Thank
but
you,
the thing
Jill.
is
You finally
but
convinced me.
sometimes when you wear it, it might be a short sleeve shirt, right?
Sure.
And so depending on why you're buying it, so you do still wanna use either DEET or one of the other products like oil of
Okay.
lemon eucalyptus, PMD, which is a synthetic version, um, picaridin, etc. So those work.
After this interview's over, I'm heading out to get a painter's suit and high rubber boots and all of the things that you just said.
Yeah.
Hey, quick pivot a little bit. You
Yes.
mentioned dogs and cats a couple of times. We have a cat who's kind of a barn cat, and try as
Right.
we might, we can't keep him inside.
Right.
And I do treat him once a month with a little drop behind the shoulder blades. I don't know if that's a good idea. He doesn't seem to be picking up any ticks. He
That's
did
good.
have
Anymore.
one
He used
Right.
to.
before. I
Right.
pulled a few off of him.
Right.
But I've also heard cats typically aren't as negatively affected usually
That's
as some other
correct.
animals, but he's just gonna get out, and so should I just do my once a month, drop behind the shoulder blades, or is there something better I could do for
I
him?
I think that's good, especially if Jill is saying that he seems to have fewer ticks. So this is where I would say consult your veterinarian, because there are definitely products, like for dogs that would have the permethrin, that
Mhm.
pyrethroid type of chemical, but for cats they wouldn't. But obviously they have products
Mm.
for cats that work. Yeah, and I used to have a cat. We used to, and he was a stray when I got him, so there were times that it was hard to train him to be inside.
Yeah,
Right. That
when we were looking for this house, we actually borrowed, I think it was Jill's mom's dog came up with us, and the first time I realized what kind of a tick situation we were in, we were out walking in the grounds of this place, and on the way home, our daughter pulled about 12 ticks off of the dog. This is the
Yeah,
first time we'd ever even seen one, let alone a
right.
dog one. We're like, "Oh boy, this is some place with ticks." It was
Right.
amazing.
And how long ago was that when you
That was
moved out?
about 4 years ago, and he's a
Okay.
Mhm.
short-haired dog, so it was really easy to spot
Right.
them, but it was kind of an
Yeah.
eye opener to all of us. We kept saying, "Oh my gosh, there's another one, there's another one, there's another
Right.
one."
And the thing is, where you live, Northwest Michigan there, 4 years ago, I would say it was a high chance it could have been both the black-legged tick, which is the vector for the Lyme disease pathogen, as well as the American dog tick, which is a
Mm,
tick that is the most prevalent around the state.
mhm,
But when I started doing research here in 2004, picking up from where Dr. Walker was working here, up in Northwest Michigan, these black-legged ticks were very rare, and that was
um,
2004. But by the time we finished in 2010, we were up around the Sleeping Bear area. The ticks were
mhm,
just coming in, and then in the next 4 years, they certainly increased, and I can tell by the information, I mean, that it's, again, just not us, because at Sleeping Bear National Dunes, they have their newsletter that they give
mhm,
out,
Mhm.
right? And 1 year of the ticks were mentioned. And
yeah,
so, they weren't mentioned for decades,
mhm.
and
Mhm.
then they
It's a
start.
topic of conversation up here quite a bit, and,
Yeah,
yeah, and we're right on the edge of the Sleeping Bear, like, when we come
right?
out of our house, we turn onto
Oh,
M22,
yep,
we see the sign there,
yeah,
yeah, that's exactly
yep,
right.
Yep,
yeah,
and we're volunteers for Sleeping Bear Dunes, and
right,
we have our, annual volunteer committee meeting coming up, and on the agenda, I believe, is ticks again. Last year,
yeah,
that was a big topic, how to protect ourselves from ticks when we're
right,
out there. And
yep,
so I have a question for you on that. So how do you see these little nymphs? They're so small. I know, like, if you're wearing a white
right.
suit, it might be easier, but it is so difficult to find these
Yes,
things. No
it
matter
is.
how well we think we're checking, they
Right.
can escape the view. So, what tips do you have for us?
Right. No, you're right. I mean, they are really small, and so I don't want people to feel defeated to not look for
Mhm.
them. I think you
Mhm,
still have to look for them, and I think you just have to try. But that's the reason why I really am pushing using a repellent
Okay.
in the first place, but then
Yep.
also try to, think about managing your clothing, etc.
mhm,
Because there is no, solution. I mean, right now, they are working on, just like you may have heard, there's a Lyme disease vaccine that's in
mhm.
phase 3
Yeah,
clinical
we
Mhm.
wanted to
trials.
talk about
Yep.
that.
There
Yeah.
is another product that is actually, again, developed from a product given to a dog, to your pet, but there is another trial that's going on where people can take a drug that will actually kill ticks. So not
Oh,
just prevent against the Lyme pathogen, because there's several other
Wow.
pathogens. And up in your
oh,
area, one the other one's the second leading vector-borne disease in Michigan and the US is is anaplasmosis. And
mhm,
that humans and dogs can get. And so that so if you could kill the tick on you before it feeds long enough to transmit, that's better than just having the Lyme vaccine.
Okay. Right.
Absolutely.
As the non-biologist on the line
Yeah.
here,
Yeah.
can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I know we always focus on Lyme's disease, but this other one,
Yeah.
and I'm not
Oh,
going to say it right,
that's
so I'll
okay.
let you
Yeah,
do that again. Yeah.
anaplasmosis. Yeah.
Yes.
So it's another bacterium, and its ecology is very similar to that of the Lyme of the to the Lyme disease bacterium.
Okay.
So a lot of small mammals as the main reservoirs, and not able to um, uh it doesn't the ticks hatch uninfected, so very similar. I think its host range is a little more narrow than the Lyme disease tick, and I think that's one reason why it hasn't spread as quickly. But everywhere where Lyme disease is really endemic and established, so is anaplasmosis, and there are a
Oh,
few other pathogens too, but anaplasmosis is the second leading tick-borne pathogen, and it can also be treated by the same antibiotic as that
Oh,
sweet slime,
Doxy?
okay.
doxycycline.
Mm, mhm.
Okay.
So it doesn't lead to it doesn't have like a famous bullseye rash, that's kind of
Hmm.
telling you
Mhm.
you have it. And so, but you do get very sick. And initially, I think you can get more sick than you do with the Lyme disease bacterium.
Well,
So Lyme disease
Okay.
bacterium, I think you feel just bad and you have flu-like symptoms. Just tired.
Hmm.
But this one, you can really spike a fever. And so hopefully that causes you to feel so bad you would actually seek healthcare. Because sometimes when people get Lyme disease at the beginning, they feel off. It depends on
Hmm.
there are different strains actually and such,
Yeah.
but it depends on the individual too, how much you're willing to deal with, right? And
right.
so sometimes the people who are less tolerant will go see healthcare, and then they will actually be treated and get better sooner.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and that's true, and I tell people sometimes to the analogy is almost with syphilis, it's a spirochete-driven
yes.
illness, and so, this has different phases to it and different levels of illness somebody might
Right.
react to, and so, it's we just wanna stay away from this disease.
Yeah, and so
We just
that's
wanna
right.
stay away.
So to that point too, so you wanna take, preventive vet measures. If you can
Uh-huh,
have someone help you look for the ticks, that would be great. Magnifying
uh-huh,
glass too, but eventually, like, you get down a systematic way that you're looking for the ticks,
uh-huh.
with your clothes on, and then certainly with your clothes off.
That's where you
Alright?
come in, Jill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So so then
Thanks, Greg.
so then, if you do see a tick that's attached, save it,
Yes.
because
Okay.
not all ticks transmit all pathogens. And so if
Mhm,
it's quote unquote just a dog tick or
mhm,
just a Lone Star tick, which is slowly coming into Michigan, you don't have to worry about Lyme disease. There's some other pathogens they transmit, but those pathogens are found in much lower proportions. So the chances of getting a pathogen are lower. Not saying zero, but much lower.
uh-huh,
But so save your tick. I usually put it in a Ziploc bag. I write down, the date. I write down, let's say it's Sleeping Bear, somewhere where you found it. Put it in the freezer. Oh, but before that, I take a picture of it, a good
uh,
picture of it, the front and the back, and then I can upload it and send it to either the state health department and DHHS. They have a program. I can send you the links later. You can give
That'd be great.
to your
we'll
edit.
post those on our show
Yep.
notes for sure.
Yep.
Yes,
Yeah,
right, and
yeah.
Michigan State, working with, University of Wisconsin and Columbia University, we have our own mobile health app called the Tick app.
I
So
was gonna bring that up just
Yes.
next, yeah.
Yes.
And we
yeah,
in our research, we ran into that. We said, "That's a pretty good idea."
oh,
We like
good,
crowdsourcing things. We use certain bird apps and things where we report stuff that we
exactly,
find,
Yep.
and that may help, you commented on it, I think, in one of the YouTube videos I
yeah,
saw with you that actually assists you guys because 'cause you're finding ticks in places you didn't know they
right,
existed, and this is
exactly,
another way where citizens and our listeners and everybody can
yes,
actually participate
Hmm.
in
yes.
pushing back against these things.
Yes, and so I like to push both those apps, and I work very much, very closely with the health department, and we like to share information where we find, ticks and such. And then I would also tell your audience that the University of Rhode Island has a wonderful resource called Tick Encounter.
Mm,
and it just has a lot of
Okay.
information, like, all in one place. So the state health department, our mobile health app, the Tick app, and then also Tick Encounter has a lot of reliable information. And obviously there's the CDC too. But sometimes I know people like to go to university links, and the Tick Encounter has so much information on there.
so
Uh,
it's a good tip.
Great.
Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
so now you send off your information, send it to all 3, see who comes back first. Hopefully the information's all similar. And then if that tick is a Lyme disease tick, and if it's fed on you for it and to the it looks a little puffy, then you can go and seek 1 dose of prophylactic antibiotics, in this case,
Mhm,
doxycycline,
Mhm.
from your healthcare provider. And
mhm,
that should reduce greatly your chances of acquiring the Lyme disease pathogen. Um, because you live in an area where at least 20% of the nymphs, 40% of the adult ticks are infected with this
mhm.
pathogen. There's no prophylaxis that's been shown. There haven't been studies to show that this prophylaxis will work against the um, anaplasmosis bacterium. And
Mhm.
so you still have to wait to see whether you get this prophylaxis or not. You should always wait to see if you have other symptoms.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And if you do have an embedded tick, I mean, everyone always discusses what's the best way to get it off, and everyone has their own different method. As the expert, what would you tell us?
I would say if you have tweezers, just use tweezers,
Okay.
but they have
Okay.
to be fine tipped. And sometimes, unfortunately, when you go to the beauty section at the grocery store, they don't always have fine tipped tweezers.
Mhm,
So you want to just try to get those, because sometimes grasping the tick you want to grasp the tick at the closest point of attachment. And so the tweezers just really help because they get right in there, pull it out. There are some
Okay.
other products that other people have told me have worked. So there is something called the Tick Key, and you may
Yeah.
have seen that.
We
And
have one. Yeah.
yes,
We
somewhere.
haven't used it yet though.
We have
right,
one somewhere.
Yeah.
We have to
Yeah.
find it.
Yeah.
right, and that's
Yeah.
a good point, Greg. So
Yeah.
Right.
I always try to say, make up your little first aid kit against tick bites.
Right. Ahead of time.
And you want to do that. Have a little
Mhm,
kit that's in the car. Have a little kit that's in the closest bathroom or the utility room, whatever your mud room where you walk in.
mhm.
And then have one in your bathroom you commonly use when you go to take your shower and
Yeah,
such.
we should probably take one in
That's
our
a great
backpack
idea.
when we go out. Yeah, that's a good
Yeah,
idea.
in your
Yeah.
backpack. And again, that includes having the device that you're going to use to remove the tick, but also a little Ziploc bag or a little pill vial or
Mhm.
something, that you can then put the tick that you find in it. And even if it's not embedded, at least in the beginning, like if it's on your clothing, sometimes I still will take it and save it, because then you can learn about what that tick is. And in the future, when you do see one that's embedded,
Mhm.
on you, and you're like, oh, it was that kind, then you'll be like, oh, okay, that was probably the dog tick, the female dog tick, the male dog tick.
Do you know
This is
you
great
you probably do
advice.
know this, but
Yeah.
do you know if they charge you for analyzing these ticks? I mean, I can
Not
imagine
the
there could be
photos.
somebody
Not
sending in 50 ticks a week and say, what's on these?"
no, no, no,
Will they
no, 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 they won't charge. Yeah. And
Okay.
these are the photos. And there are some services where you can charge to have your tick analyzed for the pathogens.
Mhm,
And as a scientist, it's hard for me to say this at first. I would say don't do that.
mhm,
It's hard to say because you think information is always good, but
mhm,
epidemiologically, they have seen both in U.S. and in Europe, at least with the Lyme disease pathogen, even when the ticks in the woods around you are infected, at let's say 20% are infected. It turns out that for the most part, the people who find the tick feeding on them,
mhm.
when they remove them and go see the doctor, they have found them before the tick's able to transmit the pathogen. And then it's not necessarily worth,
Mhm.
um, you're not, it's not going to change your health outcome because you're
Mhm.
not going to get infected. And or if you remove it in enough time, you'll get that 1 dose of doxycycline, and
Mhm.
that should do the
Okay.
trick, with or without knowing whether
Right.
or not that tick was infected,
And that
right?
makes a lot of sense because these tests have got to have false positives and false negatives too. Like
Right.
if you send in some mangled tick that you say, "Oh, we didn't find the pathogen," that doesn't mean it's not there. And so
Right.
you might have false reassurance in those cases and vice
Exactly. And
versa.
right. And the thing is, sometimes they could be real positives, but again, if you removed it before it was able to transmit, or
Sure.
you got the doxycycline,
Right.
then you should be, I think it can cause extra worry. Now, having said that, I think it just depends on each person, and so if person can rationalize all that and still say, it's good. I found out that tick had these pathogens. I'm interested in that. Then that's good. I think sometimes our minds can race, so, ahead of us. So be able later
Mhm.
on think, is this due to that, illness, due
Mhm.
to that infected tick, even though rationally, it shouldn't have been able to infect you. But
Mhm.
the other thing I remember a long time ago when this wasn't a common service, I mean, a service available to the public. I remember I worked in the lab, but part of it is also just you may have found a tick. And going back to your point of the false security or assurance, a different tick actually may have infected you that you did not see.
Mm,
Mhm.
good point.
So that is not the false positive negative of that particular tick. And if you are at
Right.
risk, because, and you
Mhm.
must be in part if you get a tick on you,
Mhm.
then again, there may be that sort of false security,
Yeah.
But I think the main thing to do is bring your evidence, the tick, to see your doctor and decide together what one should do. But I would
Hmm.
always say just be vigilant. That if you see ticks and you're in an area where they're infected, which you guys are, just know that and take precautions. Be more on the proactive side, right?
Yeah, fortunately,
Okay.
doxycycline is a fairly benign antibiotic, and if you can get meaningful treatment with just one dose, another part of our plank of topics on this radio program is
Yeah.
microbiomes and all that, and so the indiscriminate use of antibiotics is definitely not on the menu there. But
Right.
a single dose of doxycycline, I do not hesitate to take for a second.
Right.
As long as you're
Right.
not allergic to it, and there may be some other
Exactly. Well,
things out there. But
that is exactly the point, Greg. So when we talk about the use of doxycycline prophylactically or for treatment, we always have to say this applies if you're not allergic to doxycycline.
ask your doctor,
Yep.
ask your health practitioner,
Yes.
Right.
whoever that is. Yeah,
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
exactly.
Yep. Yeah.
Good.
So
Well,
Hey, this is a biology nerd question, but when growing up, most of us, the distinction between insects and arachnids is six
yeah,
legs, eight legs.
right.
In reviewing my tick biology, we go from a six-legged larva
Yeah.
to an eight-legged adult and nymph. What's going on there?
I
What? How does that happen?
Yeah, unfortunately, some that people ask me which pair of legs comes,
Yeah.
you know,
yeah.
and like, do they grow? And actually, I don't know, and I'm going to go visit a tick biologist soon, like a real tick biologist,
Right.
anatomist, systemicist. I'll ask them, but I pivot and I say, well, think about a caterpillar turning into a
Sure.
butterfly.
Hmm.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So growing
Right.
an extra pair of legs is not that much more of a big deal compared to, you
There's
know
probably
how.
just there's probably some undeveloped limb buds at the very back
Yes,
end of the larva that get
exactly.
tricked into developing because you can't undevelop as easily as well. I guess maybe you could
Right.
develop or undevelop, but all these things have segments, and that's
Exactly.
probably where that comes from. But I thought, what a weird twist! Nature is always more interesting than what we learn about in school, isn't it?
It is, but it makes for outreach, it makes it complicated for me because I can't say to everyone, ticks have 8 legs, like,
Mhm.
Right.
period. Because
At certain
sometimes
times they
they have
do. Most
6.
times they do.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. No, I keep telling that to Jill. I said, "This is bugging me," and she looks at me like I've got 2 heads, but
Right,
I get that's the same question, like, "Why don't I have 2 heads? But why do
right,
we have 6 legs and 8 legs?" It's weird.
right,
Anyway,
right.
thank you, Dean. I don't
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I did want to come back to, and I know deer, because this is an area of active research in my lab, but also other labs around the country, and which is we know we can't reduce their numbers in a way that is socially acceptable, and it's
Mhm,
also very difficult.
Hmm.
mhm.
So we are trying to see if there's a way we can give them an oral substance that they can take orally, but whether it could have something like that you give to your dogs to just kill ticks,
Mhm.
or it could be an anti-tick vaccine if and when that's actually developed.
Mm.
And
Okay.
so my lab, because I work with a lot of wildlife biologists, we're trying to see if we can develop something that we can give deer to eat. So right
Wow.
now there's no anti-tick substance, but
Mhm.
we're taking these small steps and we're patterning it off of a colleague of mine, Dr. Rick Campa. He and others have worked on the bovine TB problem
Mm.
up in
Mhm.
northeastern Michigan,
Hmm.
where working with USDA, Michigan Department of Natural Resources, as well as MDARD, they have developed a little what they call vaccine delivery unit. And it's a looks like a Fig Newton type thing. And that it's round, but it's like that. But in it, there's a vaccine against the bovine TB bacterium. And
Mm.
they've trialed it there in an experiment. And it seems like they can give it to about 70% of the deer herd up there.
Mm.
Now, Lyme disease and the bacterium, I mean, where you guys are, it's more wild and rural, but many places where Lyme disease is really, at high incidence is in areas like where I live, more of a suburban neighborhood,
Mm.
and
Mm.
so we have everything in the suburban neighborhood that's great for the Lyme disease system, the deer, the mice, the chipmunk,
Mm.
birds. And so, but no predators except for
Right.
vehicles, right? And
Mhm.
so we're trying to see if there's a way we can put out in county parks, state park, yeah, county parks, that's where we've been working at, um, or township parks to see if we can find a way to administer something to the deer, that could then in the future be a vehicle for either an acaricide, which is something that kills
Mhm.
ticks, or a vaccine that kills
Gosh,
ticks too.
that would be
So
fantastic.
Wow.
Yeah,
but it's
that would be
hard
So,
because we shouldn't
yeah.
be feeding, well, wildlife, but
Right.
sure.
also we can't do things in a way where we aggregate animals together that they could transmit pathogens to each other, like chronic wasting
Yeah.
disease, for
Exactly,
example,
that's the
or
first
bovine
thing that
TB.
came to my
Yeah,
mind. We're usually trying not to get them to get that
right.
close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
So, we're hoping we can do something that could be as successful as the oral rabies vaccine that they give to raccoons,
Mm.
and such, um, just east of us, east, and
Wow.
so in the other eastern states, but we're still definitely a little far off in development. So
It
Okay. So
sounds
it
like very
sounds like,
that's very
yeah.
challenging and, rewarding work.
yeah,
Great
yeah,
hope there. So, sorry, Joe, what were you gonna
I
say?
was just gonna say, so between that maybe coming to fruition, and then maybe a human vaccine sometime here in the near to mid future. So
right.
we have some hope on the horizon. It sounds like.
Hopefully, and then but like you said, we still just have to check because the other pathogens, at least right
Mm.
Yeah.
now, and then
Yep.
hopefully
Right.
maybe there'll be another drug that people can take themselves, and
Okay.
reduce
Okay.
and kill the ticks
Yeah.
too.
But like you
Yeah.
said earlier, this is gonna be a multi-pronged,
Mhm.
strategy. Both people individually can do things to protect themselves, their immediate surroundings, and if a vaccine and other measures to help reduce the tick populations comes about, that would be a
Right.
big help too. It just sounds like this problem's gonna be around with us for a while in one way or
Yes.
another.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I know we're coming to the end of our time here, but I think that's what I'm taking away from this, which is don't be afraid to go outdoors. Still do all your hiking, still do all your fun outdoor activities, but take the precautions that you've talked about today. I know we're going to go right away and make our little tick bags,
Yeah,
right?
tick
And
bags are
carry
coming
those
up.
with us into the woods from now on.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
lots of good tips, but
No,
that's
these
one
are
we're going to do
hugely helpful.
immediately.
Yeah, this has been hugely helpful, and you've been so
Yeah.
generous with your time and to do this interview in the midst of your workday. We really appreciate it. Our audience is gonna love this. I think we've not been doing this for very long, but we've never had this much interest. We publicize the upcoming topics, and people all around, even outside of our listening area, are very interested in
Oh,
this. So it's cool.
oh, good. Well, I'm happy to talk to you, and I'm happy to, try to spread the word to prevent tick bites and tick-borne disease. No one
Yeah,
wants that, and I want people to enjoy nature. So,
for
right,
sure, for sure.
Right.
yeah.
Well,
Yes.
great.
Well, This has
Well,
been so wonderful. Thank you again.
thank you,
We've
Jean.
so enjoyed talking with you, Jean.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so we'll wrap up for now, and if we'll put a few of the tips you put together in our show notes, and
Yeah.
would love to talk to you again. If you have any new information, you have our email, and we'll be happy to
Yeah.
publicize anything you got, and we'd love to hear from you again sometime.
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna say I did come up to I spoke with the Grand Traverse hiking club a couple I would say, yeah, March last year. Gosh, it seems like time passes. I think it was but certainly it's echoing what you guys have said up there because it's been a while since our lab has really worked up there.
Yep.
Um, and so, but everyone there just, and I'm sure if we talked to the veterinarians, they'd be saying the same thing. Yeah.
Yes. Well,
So,
you're
Thanks, Jean.
welcome to visit us anytime.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right,
Greg, you want to stop the recording?
I will, and then
And then
we're
just
off.
hold on for
We're